a short turnaround, and essentially most of the staff, or the majority of the staff anyway, left to work in remote locations. And all of that was made possible thanks to Chris Bader and our technology staff. They had already been working on for some time we've been utilizing some existing routing systems for cost share, for permitting, environmental reviews, and the like. And all this led to a very smooth transition to having staff work from a remote workplace. And as been alluded to earlier, these changes are something that will be used long-term within the agency. And again, none of this would have been possible if it hadn't been for Chris and his staff on getting this to happen initially, as well as continued support to allow us to keep working from remote locations. So we have probably 30+% of the staff working in the building or within their typical location, whether that be the shop or what have you. But the vast majority of folks are working remotely, and it is they're doing an awesome job of that. As one would expect, COVID has also impacted our budget, given that our budget is primarily made up of Resources Trust Fund revenues, so oil taxes, oil and petroleum being a volatile source of income as it is even more unpredictable given the COVID situation. And this has caused some consternation as it relates to funding of projects. In that this biennium we were anticipating, we were anticipating roughly $18 million per month in Resources Trust Fund revenues, which we were on track with up through April. And then when the COVID impact started showing up, we dropped as low as $2.3 million for 1 month, and have slowly been starting to climb back up. Then based on an anticipated revised forecast of $230 million, the Water Commission decided to push in the clutch as it relates to funding, and cost share considerations were put on hold from May through September. September, there was a new forecast that came out from OMB that was showing an anticipated forecast of roughly $10.5 million for the remainder of the biennium. And with that, the commission again started approving cost share requests. And those requests, they approved roughly $85 million in requests at our most recent October meeting. But with the update that we were given yesterday from OMB, we're looking at about $150 million shortfall from where we were expecting revenues to be at the end of last session. I'll touch now on a few efforts, the number of staff have been involved in, of which I'm very, very proud and very, very pleased with what we have done here. The first being what we refer to as a presence system. This is an acronym for Pushing Remote Sensors. This was a technology that was developed in-house by our staff, our data collection and technology staff, and it was to fill a need for gathering data in remote locations, in that it utilizes cellular service to move that data back to the Water Commission. And in locations where we don't have cell service, it can use satellite data to move it back. You can see a unit in function on the photo. They have a solar system to help with battery charging and so forth, but the system is contained within the box you see, and then sensors are placed where and how they are needed to collect various types of data. Originally, this was to collect data for surface water and groundwater situations. It also collected barometric pressure and temperature data. We've recently started collecting wind speed, wind direction, and precip data. And with the advent of some new versions of this prototype, we are able to collect soil moisture, soil temperature, and pretty much any other natural resource parameters that one might need. As of this year, we were able to put in just shy of 220 units. The surface water units, all but one, we have removed. The groundwater units we leave in place over the wintertime, and the one surface unit is placed on Powers Lake. We left that in place last winter. It worked fairly well. We were trying to some other options this year to make that a little more robust as it relates to ice impacts and so forth. But again, this is a game changer, can collect a lot of data, and this is something that, again, we're very proud of, and we will be utilizing well into the future. The next in-house developed project I'd like to talk to you about is what we refer to as NDRAM, North Dakota Risk Assessment Map Service. This is a very powerful tool that was also developed by Water Commission staff and is used to display current flood risks at any location around the state, down to the parcel specific level. It actually allows one to enter your address in if say you're interested in purchasing a new home and wanting to know what the potential concerns may be with flooding. Type in your address or pick a spot on the map, and this tool will show you the water surface elevation and flood depths for the 10, 25, 50, 100, and 500 year events at that location. It also allows you to download the data used to create that information, whether that be engineering modeling data, depth and velocity grids, or even customized maps as well. And again, this is a platform we look to build on into the future. To that end, recent innovations have allowed us to show current weather warnings on these maps, observe river stages, flood outlook information, and snow water equivalent data. One very important thing to realize that this is all accessible on the Water Commission's webpage and comes to you at absolutely no charge whatsoever. Obviously, it's a very unique and tool, but it has many uses. And to that end, if you go on to the Water Commission's YouTube channel, there's actually a tutorial that will walk you through how to use this tool. We've had a very good response from this, and I think this is a very useful tool. I'm very proud of what we've done here and think it will serve the people well into the future as well. The next bit of technology, the Williston Radar. We helped install a radar at the new Williston Basin International Airport. This radar was put in because of a lack of coverage in this area, kind of underserved by the National Weather Service. And so this helps fill a gap that has been in existence up there for quite some time. This was funded by Williams County Public Safety sales tax monies, and it allows for viewing of real-time data, just as you would any other radar data. And again, this is also available from the Water Commission's website. Moving on to some field work completed by staff this year. Our Water Appropriations Division has a drill team, a drill crew. This year, that crew was busy, maybe didn't do as much drilling as usual, again, due to the conditions. As you can see here, they installed a few observation wells, drilled roughly 8,900 feet of well material, and plugged 234 wells that were no longer serving a purpose. Again, this crew is used for groundwater exploration to include test wells, ground truthing of some of the airborne electromagnetic data collection efforts that we've had over the years. So a valuable part of the Water Commission as well. Another crew that the Water Commission has is the construction crew. Construction crew, again, was out and about this year, working on the projects you see before you. There's a multitude of different types of projects that they have worked on. and to them, we thank them for their efforts, working on some mitigation things for the commission. We also most recently dealt with a dam safety issue where we had to go in and breach a dam up in Williams County. And then also worked with the folks in Nelson County to remove an old bridge downstream of the Talna Dam that was in bad shape. So these folks work with the local water resource districts and work on some projects that can help them along. So to that end, I want to thank all the field staff this year around the state. The Water Commission has. We've got folks working on Devil's Lake Outlet, construction inspection folks on NAS and Southwest Pipeline, our data and technology technicians who were out and about all over the state, and also those who are doing dam inspections this year. So again, a unique year. So they had to make some adjustments to how they would typically do things, but they still got the job done. And for that, I'm very appreciative. Next topic I'd like to touch just on a high level is some regulatory policy changes. The Engineering and Permitting Section Chief, Matt Lindsay, will talk to this issue further in more detail this afternoon. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these issues, but they bear mentioning. This policy change here has to do with what some of you may know as the 10th of a foot policy as it relates to the issuance of construction permits. These projects typically have the ability to impact adjacent lands, and this is a policy that supersedes that 10th of a foot policy. It deals with such issues as mitigation planning and impact thresholds and so forth. So this may be of interest to some of you on future projects. These last two have to do with drainage, as you can see. The first document adds definitions. It's an effort to help clarify not only definitions, but also when and the types of projects that would need drain permits. The second policy document has to do with statewide or interdistrict significance, excuse me, hard word to say this morning, determinations, in that it helps clarify when those triggers will be tripped. And it also adds a third category, which falls between statewide significance or non-statewide significance, and then it allows an opportunity for 30-day comment period to be incorporated into that process. Again, Matt will touch on this further this afternoon, and be able to ask him any of the hard questions. So. Next, commission funding and agency project updates. Senate Bill 2020 is the agency's budget bill for this biennium. As you can see here, the legislature chose to continue along the path of purpose-directed funding. This is the second biennium in which we've had that purpose-directed funding. It's different than what those of you who've been around for a while may be used to, and that we used to have a two-line item budget, salaries and operating, and the rest fell under a single line item. So there was a lot of flexibility in the commission's budget in the past. Now this focuses and spreads the wealth a little, if you will, between the various topics that are looked at, the type of projects that we get. Again, just a note here, our budget for this biennium was to be $968 million, but again, with the impacts of COVID and the reduction in Resources Trust Fund revenues, there's going to be a shortfall of roughly $145 million less than what was anticipated. Refining our focus a little bit again on the purpose-based funding that we just talked about. You can see here the breakdown as to how much money was put in each of the buckets. It is shown. That was directed to us by the legislature. Water Commission has been mindful of that direction and have been very diligent in improving funding for water projects as funding becomes available. And even though we pushed in the clutch and tabled some requests for a number of months, you can see here that the Water Commission has definitely been busy. They've approved more than $264 million for 132 projects around the state to date. Obviously more to come as we move forward in the biennium. Life cycle cost and economic analysis. We were directed by the legislature a couple bienniums ago to develop these tools for use as it relates to the cost share program. The life cycle cost analysis, or LCCA, is used for evaluating water supply projects, whereas the economic analysis, or the EA tool, is used to develop a benefit cost ratio type of number for flood control, rural flood control, snagging and clearing, and bank stabilization projects. These tools not only aid the Commission in making the best use of state funds, but in the case of the LCCA, they also help the project sponsor have a better understanding of what the full and true cost will be of the water systems or the options they're considering, and that they essentially look at the cost from concept until decommissioning, so that everyone has a real handle on the true costs of the various alternatives that they're looking at. As it relates to the economic analysis, I mentioned benefit cost ratio. That is being used by the Commission as a multiplier, if you will, so that, as an example, if you have an EA that shows a benefit cost ratio of 1.0 or greater, those projects are eligible for full cost share percentage in the Commission's cost share policy. If, for example, the EA came up with a benefit cost ratio of 0.5, then those projects would be eligible for a 50% of the cost share percentage on a project. So for instance, a snagging and clearing, if it came up with a 50%, rather than a 50% cost share, it would be 50% of 50% or a 25% cost share. The idea being here to try and get the best return on investment for the state's monies. Another Water Commission project here, the Southwest Pipeline Project. This is a state-owned, state-built project operated by Mary Masad and the Southwest Water Authority. Though constructed with state dollars, they're, as part of this process, they are required to make capital repayments to the state for perpetuity. Currently, those repayments are to the tune of $5 to $6 million per year. And to date, we've had a total repayments of $78 million, more than $78 million worth of capital repayments made back to the state. The Southwest Water Authority has been working along with the Commission to increase intake, raw water transmission, and distribution system capacities. But much of these efforts have been put on hold due to funding limitations, again, because of the impacts of COVID. But there is potential to complete a number of tasks yet by the end of the biennium, if and when funds become available. Some of you, some of you may be aware, we've had some issues with the new intake that we're looking at constructing on the lake. I'm happy to report that although progress has been slow, it appears though the contractor's again making progress on getting this new intake built, and hopefully that will be completed by the spring of 2022. Another Water Commission project here is the Northwest Area Water Supply Project. This is a project whose time is long overdue, and the time is now to get this project built and completed. Thanks to litigation, things have been on hold to some extent with this project, but we've overcome that hurdle and are now moving forward. As you can see from the map here, the green is work that's already been done So we have completed a lot of work up there, but we still have some key elements that need to be completed for the full build out. Those elements are shown in red on the map. They include such things as the water treatment plant, whose bid opening we will have here in a couple weeks on December 17th. Modifications to the Snake Creek pumping plant, which should be ready for bid late this coming summer. The South Prairie Reservoir and hydraulic control structure, and then completion of the pipeline to Botno, to name a few key features remaining to be completed. Devil's Lake Outlet. Devil's Lake Outlet is or consists of two projects that were built, a west and an east outlet, in an effort to reduce the water surface elevations of Devil's Lake. The west end outlet, which is shown in the darker green, started pumping in 2007, and the east outlet was built at a later date that came online in 2012. As you can see, we had some pretty good years, 2012 through 2018, with getting water out. The last couple of years, we've tailed off a little bit. This year, 2020, the reason that pumping was somewhat limited had to do with the fact that we didn't start until June 1st. And then we had some water quality limitations that show up because of the lower lake levels that we've been dealing with. And then also there was a late June storm in the basin, which caused us to shut things down for a couple of weeks. So that limited somewhat the amount of water that we got out this year, but that project has removed a lot of water from the lake and continues to be operational. Next, looking ahead, project planning. This is, planning for the future is obviously something very important and something that we put a lot of effort into here at the Water Commission. One of the ways that we do that is through the Water Development Plan. And before we get started, I want to thank Pat, Bridgen, Jared Hubrights, and Sheila Fryer for compiling this document, along with some input from the water commissioners. And this process we started approximately a year ago, this January, excuse me, with the idea of trying to determine what are the needs out there in the water community for the upcoming biennium and also 10 years into the future. So to that end, there was requests sent out for information. Project inventory was developed. We then went out through some public meetings, typically held in person. Again, this year due to COVID, those were held virtually, to further go over the projects that have been submitted and look for additional clarification. And then the idea being here is this outlines the needs for the 21-23 biennium and allows to set priorities and recommendations moving forward as it relates to funding. This document is forwarded to the legislators so that they have a realistic understanding of the needs that are out there. It should be noted that the water commissioners themselves and staff went through each and every one of these submittals in order to rank them using our project prioritization guidance, all of which resulted in the table you see here. This table shows the needs that were submitted by more than 300 projects and reflect only those costs that are state eligible costs. So if you look at the bottom left hand, there's a total of $645 million in needs that are out there right now. Those are just State Water Commission funding needs. Total project costs obviously are much higher. In the past, and as you can see here, the table is broken down into our high priority, moderate priority, and low priority projects. And again, that's based on our project prioritization guidance that has been developed and been in use for some time. Breaks down the buckets, if you will. Flood control, total $268.8 million in needs. General water, 49.7. rural water, 74 million, and water supply, 252.5 million. Again, for the total of $645 million. There's a further breakdown of some of the larger projects beneath some of these headings. But again, lots of needs out there. In the past, the commission has published this water development plan and made recommendations for funding a project or purposes at a specific level based on the revenue forecast. With today's volatile economy, and the agency's revenue stream is becoming increasingly unpredictable. Therefore, we feel a more flexible and strategic approach is appropriate. After numerous process improvements brought about by legislation and agency initiatives, the Water Commission is now uniquely positioned to support projects more strategically through the implementation of the project prioritization guidance, economic analysis, and life cycle cost analysis tools that I talked about earlier. For that reason, in this year's plan, priorities are outlined by purpose with the expectation that the agency will fund the state and commission's highest priorities first within the confines of those monies that we are appropriated for development by the legislature. The project priority summary table in this slide has already been used by OMB and can also serve as a guide to lawmakers as they use the most current revenue forecast during the 2021 Legislative Assembly for outlining levels of funding for the various water development purposes. So that was the outlook for the current or the upcoming biennium. As I mentioned before, we also produce an estimate of a 10-year outlook. Again, if you look at the table, in addition to the project purpose funding, we also have agency operations for the next 5 bienniums listed as well. And then we also break it down into what are potential state obligations, local, and potential federal funding sources as well. Another item to note is on the bottom of the page is a list, and that we compare those needs listed above with potential revenue scenarios. Here, $200 million per biennium, what it would be if we had $300 million per biennium, and also if we had $400 million per biennium in revenues. Even at $400 million per biennium for the next 5 bienniums, we're still showing a shortfall of roughly $1.4 billion under the current cost share policy. It is worth noting that in yesterday's budget, the governor did propose a bonding scenario whereby they would bond $1.25 billion with a portion of that to be used for water projects. And though that doesn't entirely eliminate the shortfall, it does go a long ways in reducing the funding needs, the funding needs that are out there across the state. So also there's been talk of I believe Senator Wardner has another potential bonding bill. So there are options to close this gap, and we look forward to that. We think that's a good idea. And with that, I want to thank you for allowing me to present today, but I want to end with a very special thank you, heartfelt thank you to all of the Water Commission staff for their continued dedication, professionalism, and drive that they show each and every day to serve the people of the state in the same great manner we always have, even in these uncertain and trying times. So with that, I say thank you to them, and thank you to you.
And thank you to you, John. Would you be willing to take a question or two?
Sure.
I have one from, maybe you have a blank screen you're sharing, so we'll maybe unshare that. Michael Gunch had a question. If I can.
Say, John.
Michael, there you are. Okay.
Okay, here I am. Now we're all back. John, on the PRENS systems and their locations in western North Dakota, are they going to be integrated into the ENDON system as part of the Corps' action to increase monitoring basin rainfall and runoff on the Missouri system, or are they going to be independent of that particular installations?
So in western North Dakota is where we actually originally used these along the Missouri River,
Right.
Little Missouri River, excuse me. Given the USGS gauges are spaced, some distance apart, there's a lot of things that can happen in between those gauging stations. As it relates to ENDON, we are open to utilizing this data whenever and wherever possible.
Okay, because I know the Corps of Engineers is working with NDON to establish, there's 30 or 40 additional locations in western North Dakota, and obviously with these systems in place, just curious as to whether they were going to be a supplement or these could actually be an addition to. So thanks.
Right. I think we could use those, and we have been assisting the Corps with collection of snow water equivalent data in the past. So those efforts will continue.
Thank you.
Hi, I got kicked out of my own Zoom call, so if anybody else sent a chat to me, they are now gone. So are there any other questions for Mr. Paczkowski? I sure appreciate your time and talent. Besides the appreciation you extended to your staff, I think on behalf of all of the water users and community and projects, we sure appreciate your continued accessibility, even while people are working from their basements and home or from the pickup, or as the case may be. Was maybe a bit of a delay in getting back to folks once in a while because people were not in the office, but there was never a lack of focus on your good service to the state of North Dakota. Are there any other questions or?
Lance, I've got a question. I apologize. I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. But the presence, is it called presence?
Introduce yourself, would you, Levi?
Oh, sorry. Levi Otis with Ellingson. Say, your presence that you guys, is it called presence, the soil sensors?
The unit itself, the collection system, is called Presence. Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, I have to applaud you guys on that. That's something our industry has really been focusing on, and we're working on developing. Maybe we don't need to. Are you guys selling those to the public or private corporations?
We are not at this time. No, they have been developed in-house. The idea being, just as any of the rest of the data that we collect here at the Water Commission, it's available for public use. As it relates to the soil information that you're talking about, that is a new and upcoming version of the present system, and something that we're just now getting into, but something we intend on using into the future.
Well, just for your own peace of mind, I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. I think the more people understand what's going on under their crops is really going to change the way we manage water agriculturally. So I applaud you.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
John, this is Rich Axbig, Grand Forks County. The Water Commission meeting on Friday, December 11th at 9 a.m. Will that be a Zoom or is that a phone call in? How does that work?
That will, Rich, thanks for the question. That will, again, just as all the meetings have been since April, will be another remote call-in type meeting. Teams, I believe, is the mechanism that we've been using.
Okay, so help me, is that a Zoom or do we phone in?
It will be a phone in or Teams. Microsoft Teams is the mechanism, I believe, that we've been using. Same one that we've been using over the course of the last several commission meetings.
Thank you.
You bet.
Well, John, thank you so much for taking the time and putting together this presentation, and to your whole team, our compliments for innovation and assertiveness and doing really great work on behalf of the people of North Dakota to continue the focus on water and what we all believe its importance to our lifeblood and for the